Hello, and welcome back to the Open Your Own Door podcast. This is a podcast all about how to hone your true interest and make sure that you're living a life that is aligned and meaningful and joyful. And I'm your host, Paige Espey. It is still a snow day here. It's been basically a snow day for 5 days. I think today is day 5. I'm still looking out over a field that is completely covered in ice and snow. I know that a lot of people in like the Nashville area, they are not as lucky as we are. We didn't lose power. We had power the entire time, but there have been so many people close to us and so many people that don't live too terribly far away from us who still don't have power. And it's just crazy and insane to think about. I know so many people from Nashville said that this is like the craziest storm that they've ever seen outside of tornadoes, outside of like other ice storms in the past, that this is one of the craziest storms that they've ever seen. Just branches falling everywhere, people going days and days and days without power. It really makes you think. It really makes you think about like, what if our life was actually like this, you know? And so I don't know. I'm just very, very thankful that we never lost power. We were able to have friends over. It's so funny. I feel like with snow days in Tennessee, people get so excited and they run to the grocery and they grab up all the stuff. You know, it's so fun, like leading up to the storm hitting, because everybody is just gathering food and gathering, you know, drinks, gathering all the things anybody would want or need. I think I checked our refrigerator at one point. We had like 5 gallons of orange juice. And I'm over here thinking, we don't even drink orange juice. We don't even drink orange juice. Why do we have orange juice in our refrigerator in the first place? But anyway, it's so fun leading up to it. And the first day is super exciting. The energy's high. We had people over. There were so many people over here sledding on our hill. Kids everywhere playing in the basement. It was wild. It was fun. And then it's like, as the days go on, everybody's like, okay, like when do these kids go back to school? When does, you know, everything kind of go back to normal? But so today, daycare was supposed to be open. I think I've mentioned it. My 2-year-old is still in daycare right now. We pulled our 5-year-old out of daycare. And then the newborn is obviously here with me. He's asleep in his room. But daycare was closed today. So my 2 older boys are with my mother-in-law. And I just need to say this. I just need to get this out there. How much planning and how much preparation goes into me sitting down in this chair and getting on this microphone, because it's way more than you would ever expect. So like, you know, number one is I've got to get childcare. I have got to make sure that somebody is watching both of my older boys. I always have the baby with me. But then obviously if I have the baby with me, I've got to make sure that he has been nursed, he's clean, he falls asleep in his bed or his little bassinet, whatever. And also I've got to make sure that my notes are prepped and that I've sort of practiced the episode a little bit so that I know what I'm going to say. I've got like, I mean, as you can see if you're watching on video, I've got like little bullet points of things that I want to talk about throughout the episode so that I'm not just like super ADHD brain going all over the place. I tried to do that the first couple episodes, was to just sort of improv talk about things, but the point never got made. And it took me a long time to get to my point. And so if I were to just sit here and improv an episode, we would be here for 4 days. So I have to bullet point what I'm going to say. And I had to sort of practice the episode. And then on the day of recording, I've, again, got to make sure I have childcare, got to make sure the baby's down. I've got to put the dogs away because I'm sure you've heard in episodes in the past, dogs click-clacking behind me. I've also got to make sure my microphone is, you know, tightened up and plugged in the computer. I've got to make sure that like I have makeup on and that I'm somewhat showered. I got to make sure I'm not hungry. I don't want my stomach growling throughout. Like there's just so many things that have to happen. I also, right before I get on the microphone, I have to text my husband and say, hey, I am about to be recording a podcast. Like, please don't call, don't text. I'm about to be recording. So I just turned the sound down on my computer if you just saw me. I also have to make sure, like, I don't know, there's just a lot that goes into sitting down at this microphone and recording. And I never really thought about that whenever I listened to other people's shows. But now that I have my own show, I'm like, wow, there's a lot of behind the scenes and a lot of preparation. So I really appreciate anyone who is out there sitting down to record a podcast, because most people, or a lot of people, they just do it for free. It's not something they do to make money. That's kind of me right now. I'm just kind of doing this for free out of the goodness of my heart. And then maybe one day it'll be lucrative. I don't know. But anyway, today we are going to be talking about my birth story. I feel like it's kind of silly for me to talk about my pregnancy in such detail and not talk about my birth story. I feel like I'd be remiss to not share that with you all. And so if you are like a male listening to this, you may not be super interested in this episode. If you're somebody who is not interested in pregnancy or birth or having kids at all, maybe you don't want to listen to this episode. But most of my audience, I feel like they're mothers. They are people who want to be mothers. And so they're interested. They're interested in birth stories. And honestly, I had multiple people ask me to share my birth story via podcast, because there was a couple times on Instagram where I almost shared it on Instagram, and so many people were like, no, save that for a podcast episode so that we can all listen to it. So I'm going to share that today. But yeah, if you are new here, this is a podcast all about how to hone our true interest, make sure that our life is aligned with our values, make sure that everything that we do day in and day out is something that lights us up, brings us joy. Make sure that we are not doing things that drain us day in and day out. I think really, when I really get to the heart of like what I want to share and what I want my message to be, is I don't want people to get stuck living on autopilot, okay? I've been stuck living on autopilot in the past, and basically that means like you wake up today and you do the exact same thing today that you did yesterday because it's what you did yesterday, not because it's really something that you want to do, and not because it's something that feels aligned, and not because it feels right, but it's because it's what you did yesterday. It's because it's something that you feel obligated to do. It's something that you feel tethered to. And so this show is really just me encouraging you and giving you permission to blow up your life if you need to. Blow it all the way up. And that's basically what I did after I had my third baby. If you are new here, I essentially had my third baby and said, yep, I am going to shut down my brick and mortar shop that I've been running for 5 years. And, you know, it was a season, and the store was a season that served me the way that it was supposed to, I believe. But it also got to a point where it was not serving me. And so instead of staying stuck in working somewhere and staying tethered to something that wasn't serving me just to prove a point, instead of doing that, I decided, nope, I am going to honor this, and I'm going to honor these feelings. And the feelings that I had all throughout pregnancy and postpartum was basically, this is not working for me anymore. This is not working for me the way that it was, and I'm going to honor that, and I am going to shut this place down. It took me about a year. It took me about a full year to actually make that decision. But once I made that decision, I went full force, full speed ahead. And I was like, no, we are shutting this store down. We are going to have our, final 50% off sale. We're going to sell the building. I mean, I was all in. And one of my friends told me this week, she was like, I just commend you for like making this, like, I'm so jealous of how you can just like make decisions and just run with it and never look back. Yes, I am that type of person, but it takes me a long time to actually make the decision. But anyway, after I had my third baby and, in my postpartum time, I just said, this is not working for me at all anymore. And all of those feelings really started to bubble up when I got pregnant, like back in February, just because I was so sick during my first trimester. But just slowly as the pregnancy progressed and as I don't know, it's almost like my eyes were open to so many things. I just said, this is not for me. I'm not doing it anymore. But all of this really just comes down to the birth of my third son. So our sweet little Hutch, he was born on October 26th at 9:37 a.m. He was born in Jackson, Tennessee. And in episode 3, I really tell all about my pregnancy. I tell all about how I had a superficial blood clot in my greater saphenous vein in my right leg. I mean, I go like fully into detail about the scares that I had during pregnancy. I go fully into detail about like why my pregnancy was so concerning and how it relates to like my family history and all that stuff. And so if you have not listened to episode 3 and you're curious about my pregnancy, maybe go back and listen to that one. But so I was on a blood thinner because of my blood clot. I was placed on a blood thinner in the summer. So like basically a week or so after we found out that I had a blood clot in my leg, I was put on Lovenox. I kind of get them mixed up. I was put on Lovenox, which is a blood thinner. It's a prepackaged syringe, and you basically give yourself the shot in the belly every single day. So when I first started Lovenox, I was just doing, it's like a prophylactic dose. So I was doing 1 syringe per day. And then as I got, more and more pregnant and I gained weight, then I went up to 2 shots a day. Or 2 syringes a day. I don't really remember exactly what the dosing was. I'd have to go back and look. It might have been 70 milligram 2 times a day. Anyways, none of that matters. Y'all don't care about any of that. Or maybe you do. I don't know. If you're someone who has to take a blood thinner, or if you're someone who's pregnant or trying to get pregnant, and you might have some sort of clotting disorder. So I was on Lovenox twice a day up until I was 36 weeks pregnant. So once I got to 36 weeks, they changed it to heparin, because heparin it's another blood thinner, but basically heparin has some sort of component that you can actually reverse quickly if needed. So the whole reason you do that is when you're 36 weeks pregnant, from 36 weeks on, you could pretty much deliver at any time, right? It's kind of go time at 36 weeks. And so at 36 weeks, they said, we need to change you to heparin just in case you go into labor and, you get in there, and let's say that you took your blood thinner shot. Obviously, that is thinning your blood. And obviously, we want that because I have a blood clot. But if you get into delivery and you start to bleed too much and they can't stop the bleeding, they need a clotting mechanism in place. And so they can reverse the heparin if needed. If I were to get in delivery and start bleeding too much and, fear of bleeding out, all of those things. So if you can imagine, in the weeks leading up to delivery, I was very nervous because it is just this delicate dance. When you have a blood clot and you're pregnant and you're on a blood thinner, it is just this delicate dance once you get, once it's go time, because they want to make sure that your blood is thin enough, but it's not too thin. And I'm not medical. And I just want to preface this entire episode by saying, I'm not a medical professional. If you have questions, please go ask your doctor, go ask your midwife, ask a doula. This is not medical advice in any way. But so a blood thinner prevents new clots from forming. So I had one pretty small clot in my leg, but they wanted to make sure that I didn't form any more clots. So that's why they placed me on the anticoagulant. I always mess up that word. You can tell I'm not medical. Anticoagulant. So the whole idea and the whole premise is that 24 hours before you push a baby out, that is when you need to give yourself your last dose of whatever your blood thinner is, whether it be heparin, whether it be Lovenox, whatever. I was on heparin, and so they told me we need to time it out so that your last dose is 24 hours before you have the baby. So the baby's awake. Okay, I had to go get the baby, and now I'm nursing. So if you hear any sounds, that's what it is. If you hear any sounds in the background, it's Hutch, but that's super appropriate for this episode. So at my 36-week appointment, I found out that I was going to have to be induced, and I kind of knew that was coming. I knew that was a possibility that I was going to have to be induced, but I didn't really want to believe it until someone said the words to me, until my high-risk doctor said the words, "We are looking at induction." And then I kind of got upset and I kind of got sad because I had this vision in my head for, you always have a vision in your head for how you want your labor and delivery to go. And I had the most beautiful, wonderful, perfect experience birthing our second son, Lake. And I really just wanted to mimic that experience with our third baby. And so many people told me, you're going to have to be induced because you're on a blood thinner, you're going to have to be induced. And I didn't believe it until he just straight up came out and said it to me. And so I remember when he said that, I just said, "Oh." And he said, "Oh, you didn't want that?" And I said, "No, I really don't. I'm not an induction girly, okay? I know so many people who are. And I know that, there are a lot of times where it's medically necessary to induce. I completely understand that. And I'm so thankful for, modern medicine. I'm so thankful for all the doctors and nurses and everybody who helped me throughout my pregnancy and throughout my delivery and everything. But I do think that sometimes induction can be what's the word I'm trying to say? Like overprescribed, I guess. And sometimes induction happens when it's really not necessary. And I fully believe, I mean, I'll sit here and say I'm kind of a crunchy, I lean more crunchy than non-crunchy for sure. And I just don't want to rush something if it's not necessary. And I don't want to rush something that is biologically, like our bodies are, as women, our bodies are biologically made to bring life into this world. And I just think that we should trust our bodies in those moments. I know so many people who, you know, they have chosen to be induced strictly because it like matched up with their schedule better, or like they wanted to give birth on a Monday instead of a Wednesday, or like, you know, and I'm not really, that's not my vibe. Okay. I would rather wait and let the baby come when the baby wants to come. And I would rather let my body push the baby out when my body's ready to push the baby out. Now I do understand, like, if you are someone who has been seeing the same OB the entire pregnancy, and then all of a sudden when you're 39 weeks pregnant, your OB is like, hey, I'm going to be out of town the week of your due date or whatever. Like, I completely understand wanting the same OB that you've seen the entire pregnancy to deliver your baby. And so that is a reason why you might choose an induction date. And for medical reasons, I understand it. But for all the reasons of just like, it's just more convenient for me to have a baby this day versus this day, not my vibe. Not my vibe. But I was starting to understand that in my situation and with my circumstance, that induction was medically necessary, okay? And, you know, I say that lightly because, you know, if you continue to listen to my story, I ended up not being induced. So this baby is smiling at me right now while he's nursing. November 1st through the 5th was my due date. So basically they said you could have this baby anytime between November 1st and November 5th. I was scheduled to be induced on October 29th, which was a Wednesday. And it wasn't like that early. It's not like it was like an induction for 2 weeks early or anything. It was an induction scheduled for basically 1 week early. So that's what they set it at. They were like, yep, you're going to be having like a almost Halloween baby. You'll be having your baby the week of Halloween, essentially. And it was kind of nice to sort of know what day to plan for, because in my mind, I needed to get all of my crap done before October 29th. Not November 1st, not November 5th, but I needed to get all of my stuff done to prepare for baby. And I needed to prepare for it to be done by October 29th. So that was sort of a pro, and I'm not really a planner, but that was a pro to having the induction scheduled because it pushed me to get all my stuff done. So the week leading up to me having the baby was like the craziest, wildest, like most busy week. And I don't really recommend doing that when you're like 38-ish weeks pregnant, but if you're anything like me, you're a procrastinator and, you know, you put everything off. So I ended up launching this exact podcast on Monday, October 20th. So in my mind, I knew like, and I put this podcast off. I put it off. I procrastinated it because it was hard. Like, you know, and I'm not even going to go into all the reasons why I procrastinated this podcast, but a lot of it was very like tech heavy and I just didn't want to figure it all out. And so I told myself like, I've got to have these episodes released by Monday, October 20th. So I did the dang thing. I released the podcast by Monday, October 20th. So again, beginning of the week, I launched a podcast. And then as the week wore on, I was obviously like getting more and more uncomfortable. The pressure was building in my pelvis. And again, if you're a male, you might not want to listen to this episode because I get very vulnerable and also like maybe a little TMI. But anyway, I had a lot that I had to do at the store. I had so much that I had to do at the store before I had this baby, because when I found out I was pregnant, they told me that my due date was November 1st through the 5th. Okay. Well, we always have Christmas open house, like November 8th, November 9th, something like that. And so once I looked at the calendar, I realized that Christmas open house, like our town has like like any town, they have Christmas open house where everybody comes around and looks at all the stores' Christmas decor and Christmas merchandise. And it's like a big day for all of our storefronts in our town. So I looked at the calendar and realized that Christmas open house was going to be on November 7th and 8th. So basically I was going to have a baby a couple days before Christmas open house. So from the moment I found out my due date, like from the moment I found out I was pregnant and the moment I found out what my due date was, I was literally so stressed out about the fact that I was going to be having a baby the week of Christmas open house. So I knew that week I wanted to get this, and just in pure Paige form, not only was I so stressed about, that event, I also said, oh, let's add launching a podcast on top of all of this stress. So Monday launched the podcast, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, I basically spent all those days finishing up getting the store ready for that event. And so that meant like curating all of the displays, making sure everything was priced, making sure everything was clean. I even wanted to make sure I had all the like snacks and food and cider and all that stuff prepped, so that whoever was working Christmas open house for me could just grab and go and everything could be ready, because I knew that I probably was not going to be able to make the event. And so basically that entire week I was on my feet. I was running, go, as one does. So Friday rolls around and I think I spent the entire day at the store on Friday. So I was there 10 to 5 on my feet the whole day, just making sure everything was ready to go for Christmas open house. And because I knew that the baby, I knew that I was supposed to be induced that coming Wednesday. So Friday night I get home and I'm like, I don't feel very good. Like I told Will, I said, my body just needs to lay down. Like my body needs to rest. I have been on my feet all week long. And also on Thursday night and Wednesday night, I started having contractions. So Wednesday night, I started having contractions, but they were like 10 minutes apart. They weren't super consistent. And I mean, again, this is my third baby. So like, I know what my body feels like when I'm about to have a baby and when I'm about to go into labor. And I knew that the contractions weren't anything serious on Wednesday night. And then Thursday night, I started having contractions again, but they were like 5 minutes apart, 8 minutes apart, 10 minutes apart. They weren't super consistent. It wasn't anything like the 4-1-1 rule. And I had to like write this down because I always kind of forget what the 4-1-1 rule is. But if you're pregnant or somebody who is like, looking to give birth sometime soon, the 4-1-1 rule is basically, this is when you should go to the hospital if you're having contractions. It's when your contractions start to be 4 minutes apart and they are lasting for 1 minute. And that pattern goes on for an hour. So Wednesday night, the 4-1-1 wasn't happening. Thursday night, the 4-1-1 wasn't happening. And so, I just went to work on Friday. And then Friday when I got home, I said, I don't feel good. I need to rest. I need to sit down. My husband was he was planning to take our two older boys to our high school, like local football game, because I want to say it was like I don't know. I don't keep up with this kind of stuff, but it was like a sub-state game or I don't know, some sort of important game. And the boys really wanted to go. And I felt bad, like them not going. And so we had kind of planned to go as a family to this game. But then once I like saw how my body felt, I was like, I can't go. Like you're going to have to take them. And so Will so graciously took the boys to the game by himself. And I stayed behind and took a bath. So I took a bath with like Epsom salt and just really rested. But while I was taking a bath, I read my trusty book. I don't know if you've ever heard of this book. It is called Ina May's Guide to Childbirth. I actually have it right here. Ina May's Guide to Childbirth. It's basically all about giving birth naturally. The back of it says everything you need to know to have the best birth experience for you, whether in a hospital, birthing center, or comfort of your home. But it's basically a bunch of stories all about women who have given birth naturally. And if you don't know anything about Ina May or you don't know anything about the farm, which is right here in it's in Middle Tennessee. I live in West Tennessee, but the farm is in like South Middle Tennessee. If you don't know anything about that, maybe research it, maybe like go down some rabbit holes because it is very interesting. And so I started reading Ina May's Guide to Childbirth that night when I was in the bath. And I'm just going to add this little caveat here. The entire week, leading up to this Friday night bath time, I could not go to the bathroom. Like, I couldn't use the bathroom, okay? Extremely constipated, so much pressure in my like pelvis, area, because obviously there's a baby down there. Obviously, I need to use the bathroom, and everything that's going on my body is keeping me from being able to do that. And so a couple days before that, I had called my nurse and I just told her, like, look, hey, I'm supposed to be induced this coming Wednesday. I am having some extreme like constipation problems. Like, I don't think I'd used the bathroom in like 5 or 6 days, and it was starting to get really painful. And so I called my nurse and I just asked her, like, hey, is this normal? Like, do I need to be concerned? And she just kind of said, girl, this close to the end of pregnancy, there is no rhyme or reason. There is no rhyme or reason for what your body is doing. It could be doing one thing one day and something different the next day. She was like, I wouldn't worry too much about it. Just go home, drink some Miralax, like maybe eat some prunes, do something to try to get some things moving. But nothing was working. Nothing was working for me. And also I was a little confused because with my first 2 pregnancies, I had the opposite problem. The closer I got to delivery, I had the opposite problem. Like, I couldn't stop using the restroom. But with this baby, I was extremely constipated. So that's an important note for the rest of the story. So that night I sat there and I read Ina May's Guide to Childbirth. And I think this was just kind of a God thing. Like, I truly think this was a God thing. In my past pregnancies, when I've picked up that book, I always like to just thumb through all the stories because there's so many stories in there about, positive stories about women who have given birth naturally. So typically when I pick up this book, I am just thumbing through it and reading all the, positive birth stories because it just really gets you in the energy of, I can do this. I trust my body. I believe in my body, just mantras and really just prepping your mind for birth. Okay. And especially prepping your mind for a natural birth, which I wasn't really sold on this birth being natural, but anyways, I'll get there. So I flip open this book and I really think it's a God thing. It flipped open to the induction page. So it was this page where she was talking all about induction, and she was telling all about the modern medicine, like Western medicine induction practices. So she was talking all about Cervidil and Cytotec. And in this book, she goes into full detail of like all the adverse events that could happen. And I'm not saying any of this to like scare anyone. If you are someone who is planning for an induction, please don't let any of this scare you. But I mean, maybe take a lot of this stuff into consideration. But I don't even want to list off all the things that I read about, but one of them was like, a lot of times if you're induced, it increases your risk for a ruptured uterus, or like increased risk of postpartum blood loss. Or she mentioned one thing called like an amniotic fluid embolism, like all these like crazy things. And I'm sitting there in the bath on Friday night knowing that I'm about to be induced on Wednesday. And I'm like, oh, I don't want to be induced. Oh my gosh, I just don't want to be induced. Like I was just having a lot of stress about the whole induction process. And then I'm sitting here reading this book about all the disadvantages of being induced. Okay, so then I flip over to the next page, and the next page, she's like, okay, so try these things instead. Now, I will preface by saying that in the weeks leading up to all of this, I had asked my doctor, I said, look, I really don't want to be induced, but I understand why I'm being induced, because they really just need to be able to control all of the blood thinning, all the anticoagulant, like they needed to be able to control all of that, because the last dose of my medication needed to be 24 hours before I push a baby out. So I totally understand why they were scheduling an induction, but that doesn't change the fact that like in my heart of hearts, I still didn't want to be induced. I really didn't. So I asked him, I said, okay, in the weeks leading up to this, I said, is it a bad idea for me to like go home and try to do all of the like home things that might induce labor? For example, like eating pineapple or doing squats, bouncing on a yoga ball, eating dates, prunes. I think it's dates, not prunes. I just said, should I be doing those things or should I not be doing those things? And he said, no, I would not be doing those things because we really need for you to try to have this baby like on the induction date because we need to be able to control it. And I said, okay, I understand. Well, then I got in the bath and I read that part about, all the disadvantages and like things that could happen to the baby and things that could happen to the mother. And I was like, okay. Then I kind of felt I was a little confused, right? But then the next page in the book talks about how, you can do certain things. You can do certain things to naturally induce labor. And I already knew about most of these. So one of the things that she mentioned was like having sex. The other thing that she mentioned was nipple stimulation. That's why they tell you not to like pump in the weeks leading up to birth because you don't want to go into like, premature labor or whatever by stimulating your nipples because you're pumping. And also she mentioned castor oil, so like ingesting castor oil, and she also mentioned like sweeping your membranes. So also in the weeks leading up to all of this, I had asked another doctor about his opinion about castor oil. And I said, can you talk to me about castor oil and the benefits, like the pros and cons of castor oil when you're trying to get a baby out? And he said, there's like old wives' tales that say that if you ingest castor oil, that it'll get things moving and it will speed up the process of labor if you're trying to go into labor. And I said, okay, well, do you think that that's something, would you recommend it or not? And a doctor, he said, no, I would not recommend it strictly because it can dehydrate you. A lot of people who drink castor oil become extremely dehydrated. And that's why, and a lot of times because you're so dehydrated, it can send you into labor. And he was like, and that's no bueno. That was his exact term. I'll never forget it. He said, and that is no bueno. So I would not be ingesting any castor oil. Okay, so I take my bath, I read all that, I go to bed, and the next morning Will has to wake up really early and go to work. So I haven't really touched on this in this episode, but my husband is a farmer and this is in October and he farms cotton and they own a cotton gin. So this is like prime harvest time. My husband is gone 14 hours a day and he's literally not home at all. I'm like not seeing my husband at all during all of this because he is busy at work, busy bee. So I wake up Saturday morning, my husband goes to work, and I have both of my boys, Worth and Lake. Worth's 5, Lake is 2. And we, we're making breakfast. We are playing games. I'm really soaking in the fact that this is probably my last Saturday with both of my boys at home before the baby arrives, right? And so I had read in Anime's Guide to Childbirth that if you do eat castor oil, then to take 1 tablespoon and make it with scrambled eggs. Instead of using olive oil or butter or, coconut oil, then to make your scrambled eggs with castor oil, just 1 tablespoon. And so I told Will, also at this point, I still had not used the bathroom and I was so miserable. So I told Will, I said, I'm about to make my scrambled eggs with this castor oil. I may regret it, but what is 1 tablespoon of castor oil in eggs gonna do? What's it really gonna do? What harm could it do? But I was like, I'm about to do it. And Will was like, all right, good luck. He left, he went to work. Okay. So I make the scrambled eggs with 1 tablespoon of castor oil. Also, side note, I've seen videos of crazy people on TikTok, drinking 4 tablespoons of castor oil to try to get their baby out. Anyway, I just want to say I was using a very small amount, 1 tablespoon made with scrambled eggs. And I'm just here to tell you, I used the bathroom within 1 hour. I'm just here to tell you, I used the bathroom within 1 hour and I went into labor within 4 hours. So again, I'm not a medical professional. I am not here giving any sort of medical advice, but I will say that castor oil worked for me. I also don't think Hutch has ever talked this much or babbled this much in his entire life. So this is really interesting that he's doing this during this episode. Okay, so after I ate the scrambled eggs, about an hour later, I used the bathroom and I was like, wow, that was crazy. But then I noticed okay, that actually worked, right? Okay, well, after I had already ingested the castor oil in the eggs, then I think I sent a Snapchat to my friends that said, The castor oil worked. I used the bathroom, whatever. And all my friends were like, oh my gosh, yay, that's so good. One of my friends said something like, oh, you ate castor oil? She was basically like, because I knew going into it that it was controversial. Like in the OB world, I knew that it was controversial. But I remember I'd already asked my doctor about it, and my doctor just said that the only reason that it is controversial is because they don't want you to get super dehydrated. So I told myself like, yo, I'm going to make these eggs and then I'm going to drink a ton of water with my electrolytes to make sure that I don't get dehydrated, right? Well, I told one of my friends that and she was like, I think the reason that it is controversial is because you don't want the baby to poop like inside of you, like in the womb. You don't want them to like have their first bowel movement inside of you, like with the meconium or whatever, the dark like black tar looking poop. You don't want them to do that in your body and then accidentally, like, you don't want them to eat and ingest their own poop. And I was like, oh shoot, like I have messed up. And so then I freaking like went and laid down and got on a TikTok rabbit hole about like the cons. This is something I should have done before I ate the castor oil, mind you, but I went down and discovered all the cons of ingesting castor oil when you're pregnant. And then I got really mad at myself and I was like, Paige, you're an idiot. Like, why didn't you research this more? But like literally I had just asked my doctor about it a couple weeks before that. And he just said that it's because you don't want to get dehydrated. I didn't know that it was like a risk to the baby, right? So, but this is after I'd already eaten it. So like it was too freaking late, right? So I sat there and got in my TikTok rabbit hole. I went, got anxious, whatever. But then I was like, you know what? There's nothing I can do about it now. There's literally not one thing I can do about this now. So we're just going to go on with our day. We had a couple birthday parties that we had to go to that day. So I had to get myself ready and I had to get the boys ready. So, as the day goes on, again, Christmas open house is quickly approaching. And, being the creative person that I am, there's so many things that I want to do in the store before Christmas open house. And one of those things was to make a magnolia garland. So I pack up the boys, I take them to one of our neighbors' houses, and I take some little shears, some scissors, and me and Worth go out there and we cut all these magnolia branches down so that I can make my magnolia garland for the store. So I throw all of these branches into my car and then we go to Sonic. And at this point, I'm still like kind of paying attention to my contractions. I'm having contractions here and there, but they're nothing crazy. And so I knew that we had these 2 birthday parties to go to that afternoon, but I was being very smart about what I said to the boys. Like, I didn't want to wake up that morning and say, hey, we have 2 birthday parties to go to, because I didn't really know if my body was going to make it to 2 birthday parties. So I hadn't really told the boys about the birthday parties yet. But once we went to Sonic and like I literally ate a burger and tater tots. Once we went there, I was like, all right, boys, there's a birthday party in Brewston, which is like 20 minutes away. It's a really, really, really small town. We have a birthday party at a park, like a city park in Brewston, and it's 20 minutes away. I was like, do y'all want to go to this birthday party? And they were like, yeah, like we want to go. So sort of against my better judgment, I start driving to Brewston, which again is 20 minutes away from our town. But it's not only 20 minutes away, but it is 20 minutes in the opposite direction of where the hospital is. Okay, so like if I wanted to go to the hospital in Jackson, which is an hour away, I would have jumped on Highway 70 and driven to Jackson. But if I want to go in the opposite direction, then I drive to Brewston. Okay, so I'm on my way to Brewston. I'm on my happy little way to Brewston with the 2 boys. We had stopped by and gotten a little gift for this little girl, and we're on the way, and I start having contractions like 2 minutes apart. Okay, 2 minutes apart. And I was like, oh, this is interesting. Like my belly was like getting hard and staying hard. Like it basically, there was hardly any time in between the contractions. And so I was like, oh shoot, this probably is not good. Again, I'm by myself. Will is at work. I'm with the 2 boys by myself. And so I call Will and I say, hey, I'm having contractions and they're 2 minutes apart. And I'm on the way to this birthday party. In Brewston. And Will says, well, you don't need to be going to the birthday party. You need to be turning around and coming back home. And I just, for whatever reason, was still in my mind, like, I'm fine. And so I said, I don't really know how to get to this park where this party is. So can you drop me a pin And he was like, no, like, he was like, no, you need to be coming home. You don't need to be going towards this park. And I said, well, I at least just want to drop the little girl's like gift off to her. And he was like, no, you need to come home right now. So I turn around and, I'm paying attention to my body and I'm like, yeah, these contractions are like, they're very, very, very close together. So I turn around and again, I'm with a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old and they like think they're on the way to a birthday party at a park. And I'm like, hey boys, I think we're actually not gonna go to the party. And they're over here, what? Why? Why can't we go? They start throwing a fit. And I just told them, I think that baby Hutch is coming today. You know how I told you that baby Hutch is going to be coming sometime soon? Well, I think he's actually going to be coming today. So I end up calling my mother-in-law and I'm like, hey, there's another park in our town. And I said, hey, can you meet me at the Carroll County Inclusion Park and just let the boys play there for a little while because I think I may be going into labor, but I'm not really sure. And so my mother-in-law says, yes, I'll be there. So I go to this park in Huntingdon, in our town. And it was sad because, like when you know you're about to have a baby, you want to have time to like say goodbye to your other kids. I mean, I can remember having a really special time with Worth before I left to go to the hospital to have Lake. And this was just a very rushed situation. I called her, she came, I basically like hug, kiss, I will see y'all when I see y'all, gave him a hug. And at this point they were at this park and they didn't care about me. They were just like, bye mommy, like whatever. But in my heart, I was like, this is really sad. I'm like so depressed right now. Anyways, so I end up going home and mind you, I still have magnolia branches all in my car because I was going to make a garland. And so I get home, I pull my car up to the back of our like back porch. And about that time, Will is like getting home from work and I'm like throwing branches out of my car and he's just looking at me like, what the hell are you doing? Yeah, 9 months pregnant, throwing all these branches out of my car. And also, not only did I do that, but I watered them. I also took the hose and watered them because I didn't want them to dry out before I had a chance to make the garland. Anyways, again, my husband is like, what are you doing? Like, go inside and grab your stuff. I think Will was freaking out a little bit more than I was. Our hospital bags are like packed for the most part, but like car seats not installed. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that I still needed to add to the hospital bag. So I go inside, I finish up packing up the hospital bag. We grab the car seat base, we install that. And like, if you know my husband, he likes to take like 17 showers a day. And I was like, babe, do you want to like hop in the shower real quick? And he's like, no, I don't want to hop in the shower. I want to get to the hospital. And I'm over here thinking, why are you freaking out? So he doesn't take a shower. We jump in the car and we head to Jackson. Of course, we get like behind the slowest vehicles that you can possibly imagine. I'm not having insane contractions at this point. I mean, they're still really close together, but it's like nothing crazy, right? But the only reason I went is because they were so close together and they were lasting at least a minute long. So we park. And when we get to the hospital, Will's like, do you want me to drop you off, at the entrance? I'm like, no, I can walk. Like, I'm literally fine. So he goes and we park in the parking lot. And when I tell you, as we are walking into the hospital, as we're walking in, I look at Will and I'll never forget it. There was a man sitting there and he was smoking a cigarette outside the hospital. And I look at Will and I'm like, something is trickling down my leg. And Will is like, are you okay? Is it your water? I'm like, no, I don't think it's my water. Like, it's not a gush. It's not like a lot of liquid. It's just something dripping down my leg. And it's like making me kind of hard to walk right now. Like I'm like afraid it's gonna get everywhere. So Will's like, okay, let's just get in the freaking hospital. So we get in the hospital and he goes to check us in. You have to like check, because it's the middle of the day on a Saturday, like 3:00 on a Saturday. So we go in there and like, as he's checking us in at the front desk, I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna go to the bathroom and like see what's going on, see what the vibe is. So I go to the bathroom and I sit down to pee and like a lot of pee comes out, but also a lot of blood comes out. Okay. Granted, I had taken my blood thinner shot at 7:30 that morning. So I took my heparin at 7:30 that morning before I ate my castor oil eggs. So I use the bathroom and it's like a lot of blood and I kind of clean myself up and I come out of the bathroom and as I'm walking out of the bathroom, I look down and there's more blood dripping down my leg, like into my tennis shoes. So I look at Will and he's like at the front desk trying to check me in. They're going so slow and I'm like, yo, there's a lot of blood coming out of me right now. And he's like, well, let's go on and get on the elevator. And I'm like, no, like I can't walk. Like if I walk, it's going to go everywhere. So like, I need you to get me a wheelchair. And he was like, oh, you need a wheelchair right now. I'm like, yes, I need a freaking wheelchair. Okay. Like I was embarrassed, but also like everybody was moving very slowly. And I was like, I don't think you understand. Like there's dark red blood coming out of me right now. I need to sit down. Okay. So I sit down, he wheels me up to triage. We get in triage and they're like, you know, what's going on? And I tell them, you know, I'm 38 something weeks pregnant. I started bleeding just now when we got to the hospital, or we came to the hospital because I was having consistent contractions. When I got to the hospital, I used the bathroom and there was a lot of blood. And so like all of a sudden, all the nurses are like moving really quickly. They're like, okay, well, we'll get you in. We'll check you, blah, blah, blah. We'll check your baby, just all the things that you do when you get to OB triage. So I get there, they check me. I'm only dilated to like a 1, if even a 1, okay? But when they check me, they were very concerned with the amount of blood that they saw. So, but they didn't tell me all that at the time. You know what I mean? They were just all kind of like frantically moving around, and like they all kind of like, some of them looked a little worried. I could tell. And so I asked, like, am I okay? Is my baby okay? They're like, your baby is great. Baby sounds great, you know, whatever, heartbeat's great, but we need to get you up to a floor or, you know, up to a room. And I'm like, so are y'all keeping me? Like, am I having a baby today? They're like, yeah. And I said, well, is everything okay? You know, like, is this normal? And I remember one of them said, it can be. It can be normal. But, you know, I reminded them, like, I'm on a blood thinner. You know, I took my last dose this morning at 7:30 a.m. And anyway, so they get me up to a room, and I can definitely tell in the transition from triage to the room, energies were a little stressed. Like I could tell the nurses were a little stressed. Everybody was kind of trying to keep me happy. I mean, I can pick up on energies so easy. And they were all trying to like ask me questions, ask me about my kids, you know, all the things. And I just was like, what's going on? Right? Like what is going on here? And so I end up finding out, the doctor ends up coming in and telling me, at some point, I don't even remember at what point, but he ends up coming in and telling me, or I find out later, I don't even know exactly when I found this out, but he told me that it was a possibility that I had a placental abruption. And I am so thankful. I am so freaking thankful that at the time I didn't know how serious a placental abruption could be. I didn't know that sometimes that results in losing the baby. Sometimes that results in losing the mother. Like, again, I'm not trying to scare anyone, but like when he told me that it was a possibility that I had a placental abruption, I'm just like, okay, because I didn't know what that meant, right? But he also told me, he said, you know, if you have a placental abruption, normally your baby would be in high distress, and your baby is not in distress. Your baby is very happy. His heartbeat is great. There's nothing going on with your baby. He's like, we just need to take your blood work to make sure that you have not had an abruption. So they take my blood work. Everything comes back great. We've pretty much decided that I do not have a placental abruption, but that was what everybody was freaking out about in the beginning. And that's why everything was like so hectic and crazy when they got me into the room. Also, like every time I would go use the bathroom, I would just lose a ton of blood. I remember one time when I went, like, and I'm fine at this. I'm like up using the bathroom, moving around. And I remember one time when I went to use the bathroom, I lost so much blood. Like it was, the smell of the blood was starting to like get to my head. You know how it smells, you know, like I was like, ooh, this is like, I didn't feel like, I don't know. I kind of felt like I was going to pass out, but I just remember telling Will, like the smell of this is not good to me. Anyways, so they get me all situated. At this point, I've basically told them, like, I don't like laboring laying down in the bed. I do not want to labor laying down in the bed. And they were like, well, we need to get, you know, a good fetal monitor reading of your baby to make sure everything's good. But once we make sure everything's good with him, then we can put this like sticky fetal monitor on your belly, and then you'll be able to get up and move around and you won't have to be tied to your bed. Also, at this point in my mind, I'm thinking, am I going to get the epidural or not get the epidural? I have not really mentioned this yet in this show, and I meant to or in this episode, and I meant to mention it earlier. But with my first baby, with Worth, I ended up getting the epidural when I was dilated to a 5. It was also my first baby. I didn't really know what the heck I was doing. I didn't know what my body was supposed to be doing. I didn't know what it was supposed to feel like, but my water broke probably when I was at like a 3 or a 2, something like that with Worth. So then I ended up getting the epidural when I was dilated to a 5, and it took a really long time to have him, like a really long time. I think I pushed for like 2.5 hours. I couldn't feel when I was having contractions because I had an epidural. My body actually stopped contracting, so they had to give me like heavy doses of Pitocin to even keep my body moving. And so I ended up having like a ton of just swelling and a ton of pain after the fact, after I had Worth. And I really contribute most of that to the epidural. So when I had my second son, it was so perfect. Like I labored at home most of the time. By the time I got to the hospital, I was dilated to a 5. And when I got there, this is again with my second son. When I got there, they said, do you want to get an epidural? And I said, no, I just want to see how bad things get. And they said, okay, well, just to let you know, if you're going to get an epidural, you need to let us know before your contractions are 2 minutes apart. Because once they're 2 minutes apart, or, you know, maybe a minute apart, something like that, they were like, you won't be able to sit still long enough to get the epidural. So just be sure that when you decide you want it, that you call for it fast enough. So I remember with Lake, I got to a point where I was feeling contractions in parts of my body that I didn't even know could contract, okay? And so I was like, yep, I want the epidural. But by the time they came in to administer it, my contractions were too close together. And so I could not get the epidural, and I ended up birthing him on the bed. I didn't want to birth him on the bed. I remember saying, like, I don't want to lay down. It hurts so bad to lay down because, again, this was a natural birth. I was like, I don't want to lay down. And they were like, well, your water hasn't broken yet. And so because my water was still in there with Lake, they wanted me to deliver him laying down because I honestly think they were like afraid that they were going to drop him. If I were standing up, they were afraid that he would like slip or whatever. So they essentially made me birth my second son laying in the bed when I asked them to not make me do that. So I didn't love that, but he came so fast. I pushed like 3 times and he was out, and I didn't have any tearing, any epidural. My healing was amazing. Like chef's kiss. I was playing soccer like the next day with Worth out in the backyard. Okay. So I knew that in a perfect world, I would not receive an epidural because I feel like the epidural makes your recovery so much longer and so much more complicated. So, you know, once I got back to this room with Hutch, once I got back there, they asked me like, no, they didn't ask me. I remember in my mind, I was thinking, okay, am I going to get this epidural or am I not going to get this epidural? But then the decision was kind of made for me because the CRNA came in at some point that evening and she said, how are you doing? Like, how are your contractions? And I was like, I'm good for now. But again, I was still only dilated to like a 2 at this point. And she was like, well, I've got some good news and some bad news. And I was like, just lay it on me. Like, I don't need all this sugarcoating BS. And she said, you actually can't receive an epidural until 7:30 tomorrow morning because you can't get an epidural until 24 hours after your last blood thinner shot. So I had given myself a blood thinner shot at 7:30 Saturday morning. And so she said, you can't receive an epidural until 7:30 Sunday morning. And so that made up my mind for me. And I was like, okay. Like, basically when she said that, it was almost like something flipped in my mind, like a switch went off. And I was like, let's freaking go. Like, I don't even have the option at this point to really get the epidural. So we might as well I'm in this for the long haul. You know, like I know that it's going to be hard, but I don't have an option. And it was almost kind of nice to like not have the option. It was almost like the option was just completely taken away. And so I knew I had to fight through and I knew I had to get through it, right? So that was I feel like that was like a good thing that she took away the option for me. So anyways, my body's progression was pretty slow, which was really disheartening because when I had Lake, everything moved very, very quickly. Like when I had Lake, again, I got to the hospital at a 5 and everything just moved so fast, like within a couple of hours. But with Hutch, with this time, I was very discouraged because everything just was moving so slowly. And so I can remember at some point just asking like, yo, what's the next step? What do we do from here? Am I going to be here for 4 days? Like, what's the vibe? And they were like, well, next thing to kind of speed things up is we can break your water or we can start Pitocin. I had always heard, I've always thought and heard that like Pitocin is the devil, right? You always hear that. The Pitocin drip is the devil. You don't want that. You don't want Pitocin. And so in my head, when I heard the word Pitocin, I was like, absolutely not. I don't want that. But this little angel of a nurse, her name was Sarah Fisher. Like, shout out Sarah Fisher. I feel like I should have sent you a Facebook message by now thanking you for that information. But I asked Sarah, I was like, hey, like, what would you do if this was your baby? She was also pregnant. I think she was like 33 weeks pregnant. And I was like, what would you do if you were in my shoes? Would you start Pitocin or would you have them break my water? And she was like, I would absolutely start Pitocin. I would not have them break your water. I would keep your water as long as possible, because when you have your water, it still provides somewhat of a cushion, so your contractions don't hurt near as bad, and you can withstand the contractions because you have that cushion of like water or amniotic fluid or whatever it is. And I was like, oh, that makes a lot of sense, because again, when I had Lake, I was able to handle all of the contractions and birth him naturally because I had the water the whole time. Like I said, when Lake was born, when he came out of me, that's when the water came out. Like, he was birthed with my water, right? So that's why I was able to handle all those contractions. And so she said, I would keep your water as long as physically possible. So then I would just go on and start Pitocin. And then just to like get a second opinion, of course, I go on TikTok and I type in like, should I break my water first or get Pitocin first? And this doula comes up, and literally I think I watched this doula's videos like all throughout my labor and delivery process. I would just go to TikTok and like type in questions. And so this doula, she also said the same thing. She was like, keep your water as long as possible. So anyways, that's what I decided to do. I decided to start Pitocin. And it was still slow. Everything still was moving pretty slowly. A lot of this is kind of a blur because I was literally in labor for 19 hours, I think. 19 hours or 17 hours, something like that. Anyway, so once things started to get kind of hairy and once my contractions really started to ramp up, I just remember they kept telling me, the doctor's going to come by and check you soon. The doctor's going to come by and check you soon. But like the doctor was not coming. And, I'm the type of person, when I'm having contractions, I want to like push down on something with my arms. So whether that be push down on like a countertop or push down on the bed. I also don't want any noises. So like anytime I could feel a contraction coming on, I'll tell Will, like, turn your Snapchat off, turn your videos, your reels, like turn everything off. I do not want to hear one sound. Like, I need to just work my way through this contraction. Something else that helps me work through contractions is like making like noises, like almost like gluttural, like deep noises. Like, I don't like be sounding like an animal or anything like that, but I mean, I know that Ina May's Guide to Childbirth, she'll say that it's so natural to give birth, and like monkeys give birth. And so there's this whole section about how, it's so primal for us to give birth, and like animals, they make the loudest noises when they're birthing babies. So like humans, need to be able to do that too. And you need to be able to be in safe environments where you feel like you can just let it all out and make whatever noises you want to make. But I mean, I'll say that for me, it helps for me to say things like, oh, like that, or like, oh my gosh, or oh my goodness. I will say I didn't say curse words throughout the entire time, and that's good for me. Anyways, so I'm working my way through the contractions. I'm pushing down on countertops, pushing down on the bed. At some point, I can remember, like, I mean, I labored for so long. I can remember, like, I didn't want to lay on my back because I had birthed Lake on my back. So during this whole process, I just told the nurses, look, I cannot birth this baby on my back. And they're like, why do you feel like you have to birth him on your back? I'm like, because they made me the last time I was here. And they said, no, girl. You can birth this baby however you want to. You do not have to birth him on your back. And so, but there were several times where I had to like get in the bed to just rest because I had been contracting for so long, but I couldn't lay on my back because that hurt. So I would lay on my side and I would like hold on to that like handle, that like handrail on the side of your hospital bed. I would hold on to that and just squeeze it. And it was almost like I would like I was trying to run from my contractions. That's the only way I know how to describe it. I would hold on to that handrail, and then when contractions would hit, I would like climb up the handrail, and it was almost like my body was like literally trying to run away from the contraction. I know that's a really weird way to describe it, but that's the only way I know how to describe it. But so at some point, when things started to get really bad, I was like, I need a doctor to come in here. Like, I'm not playing around anymore. I need to talk to a doctor. And so, because I think for like an hour, they kept being like, oh, he's going to come by any minute. He's going to come check you any minute. Like, and so anyway, she comes, like, finally, whoever, I guess the doctors had shifted at that point. She comes in and checks me, and I'm only dilated to like an 8. And I'm like, I'm not doing this. I'm not doing this much longer. Like, I'm not going to make it. Like, I need for something to happen. Okay. And they said, okay, well, we can break your water now if you want us to. And I said, okay, well, am I like close enough to delivery? And they're like, we think that if we break your water, it's not going to be much longer. And so I said, break my water. Like, let's go. Let's do this. And they were like, we're just warning you. Once we break this water, it is going to be very, very, very painful. And I was like, okay, just do it. Like, just do it. I've got to get whatever it takes to get this baby out of me. I cannot handle these contractions much longer. So they come in, they break my water, and the contractions start immediately. Like, I mean, when I say contractions, I mean like the strong contractions. And I'm doing the same thing. I'm holding on to the bed. I'm crawling up the bed. And so at one point I just said, I can't do this on my back. And they're like, don't get on your back. Don't get on your back. They were like, you can, like, whatever you need to do, listen to your body, listen to your body. And so I ended up like shifting my body and getting up on all fours, like literally on all fours. And so the doctor comes in at one point because I'm like, I think I need to push. And they're like, okay, well, just listen to your body. Listen to your body. I was like, I think I need to push. So the doctor comes in and she starts like suiting up, like getting her gloves on, getting her gear on. You know how everything gets really dramatic. Like they start turning on all the lights, they start getting their little table and like, everything ready for when the baby comes out, and they're prepping the room for delivery. The doctor comes in, and then somebody, and I'm over here screaming in the bed. Okay. I was screaming, honey. And somebody comes in and tells the doctor, hey, they need you in the next room. And the doctor said, right now? And they said, right now. So I'll never forget the look on her face. She just starts taking all of her gear off, taking her, her sanitized gear off, and she leaves the room. And I'm like, this baby is not waiting. I'm like, I feel like I have to push. And they're like, then push. Like, cause I was like trying to wait for the doctor. You know what I mean? I was like, am I allowed to push this baby out without this doctor in here? But like, I mean, truly, it gets to a point where your body just takes over. Like, everybody's like, how did you do that? Like, how did you do that naturally, whatever? I'm like, your body just takes over, dude. Like, I don't know how to explain it. It's kind of like, I've never run a full marathon before, but I've run plenty of half marathons. And it's like, once you're running and your body has run 10 miles, like, you don't sit there and think, oh, I have 3 miles left to go, because your body just takes over and it just starts to do it for you. It's like you're not even moving your legs. It's like your body's moving your legs for you. And that's the same situation as birth. I mean, at some point your body just literally takes over and does it for you. It hurts. Yeah, it hurts. But like, you don't have a choice but to let go. You just have to let go. Like, you have to, an image that has always been presented to me when describing childbirth is like, think of a flower, and think of how a flower that's about to bloom, it's like all tight. It's like in a bulb or whatever. And then it just like opens. And that's essentially what your, bottom side does whenever you birth a baby. And so at one point I just had to think about that flower and be like, let it open, honey, let it open, let the floodgates open, let it out. And so, yeah, the doctor was still gone, and I was like, he's coming. Like, I cannot stop this. And they're like, I can remember the nurses just saying, listen to your body, do what your body tells you to do. And so those next few contractions, they were awful. And I also had a pillow. I also had my pillow from home, and that was on the bed. And I'll never forget, like, looking at the pattern of the fabric on the pillow. We have like these really pretty like floral cotton sheets. And I can just remember staring at the flowers and being like, I can do this. I can do this. And I'll never remember like the feeling of him coming out was like the biggest relief I've ever felt in my life. And I just immediately like, because again, I'm on all fours, okay? And I just immediately like turning my body around to see him and like laying on my back. And the first thing I saw was like this tiny little wet head of like black hair. And the first thing I said was, is he okay? Is he okay? And Sarah Fisher, the sweet nurse, was like, girl, he's fine. He's already crying. He's right here. He's fine. And I was just like, is he okay? Is he okay? And she said, he's fine. He's great. He's mad, but he's here, you know? And they turned him around and laid him on my chest. And I remember the first thing I said to Will was, he looks just like Worth, because he did. Like, he had these squinty little eye, like half moon eyes, just like Worth did. And they laid him on me. And, you know, I'm a big proponent for like delayed cord clamping, all that. So they laid him on me. He was crying. Gosh, you just never forget like the smell of just like a fresh newborn baby. And I looked at Will and he was just like, dang, like that was wild, you know? And then the next couple hours, it's truly like golden hour. I always like to nurse my babies without a diaper on. I know that's really weird and it's also a big risk because we were talking about meconium earlier. Like, you never know when they're going to have that first like poop outside the womb that's like black and tarry and all that stuff. But I like to have some time where the babies don't have anything on them that is like of this world. Does that make sense? Like, I don't want the hospital blanket immediately. I don't want the diaper immediately. Like, I just want him, me, and our bodies to just like warm each other up. And I know that sounds so weird, but like I always end up nursing my babies for a little while without a diaper because I'm like, I just don't want him to be touched by the world yet, you know? Anyway, I'm gonna get like emotional. So I nursed him for a while, and I can remember asking Will for a latte and some oatmeal. That was like my first thing that I requested after giving birth, which normally I feel like it's like a burger and fries or whatever, but I was like, I want something that like nourishes my body. Also, just a side note, something else that Ina May says is that whenever you are giving birth, so many times like hospitals, and I know why they do it, but they'll say like, you can't eat, you can't eat, you can't eat. You know, they don't let you eat because just in case you have to go into surgery or whatever. But Ina May says that you can eat and that you need to be nourished. And now I'm not saying that means like go eat a pizza or anything while you're in labor. But at one point, you know, during the night, I asked Will to go get me some trail mix. And I'm not like a trail mix girl. I don't normally eat trail mix, but my body just wanted something that was nourishing and something that would give me energy. So I ate like an entire package of trail mix at some point in the middle of the night. And I think it truly gave me a lot of energy to push through and get through that delivery. And so, yeah, I just sat there and nursed him, drank my little latte, had my oatmeal. Will got to do some, you know, skin to skin with him. I will say he didn't spend very much time with Will. He immediately wanted to come back to me, but I was not, you know, I wasn't in that room for long. They quickly got me into like a recovery, like mother baby situation. And you know, I had stressed so much about delivery because of the blood clot and because of my blood thinner and because of the induction. Like, I had stressed for so long about it. But it's like, he came when he was supposed to come. And, you know, whether or not I was supposed to do castor oil or not, I did it. It worked. I remember telling my doctor at one point, he came in and I was like, look, I know I probably shouldn't have done this, but I ingested castor oil this morning. And he was like, cool. I wasn't in trouble, but he kind of was like, okay. Anyways, I've never actually like told a birth story like this before, and it does just make you relive it all. One of my friends this morning asked me like, are you ready for a fourth yet? And I'm like, you know, after thinking about this whole birth process, I don't think no. I do not want another baby to come from my body. I will just say that. Like, I'm not opposed to like having 10 more kids in my family. I just do not want to birth any more children because of like everything that I had to go through to get here. And I think because it wasn't a super easy process being pregnant and bringing Hutch into the world, I think that's one reason why in postpartum, I just sort of told myself, like, I'm not rushing this. I'm not going to squander this time. I'm not going to work my life away during postpartum. I am truly just going to soak this up and enjoy being with him. And, you know, because I didn't do that with my other two babies, I just I almost like prided myself in birthing a baby and getting right back to work, not even checking up, not looking up, not taking time to heal, and just getting right back to it. And I'm not mad at myself for that, because that's what I needed at the time. But I'm older now, I'm wiser now. This is my third baby, and I just want to take the time to soak it up. So I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you genuinely like have any questions, anyone, if you have any questions about natural birth, any questions about like my healing process, any questions about blood clotting, blood thinners, I am an open book. I will DM you all day about it. It was a whole scary situation, whole experience all around. It was pretty scary, but we're here. We made it, and we have the most precious chunky baby now. He just turned 3 months old a couple days ago, and I just can't believe it. And I also just want to thank you guys for listening to my show, because I know that there's baby noises in the background. I know that he's nursing half the time, but you guys, this show is keeping me, what's the word? It's keeping me in the game as far as someone who identifies as like a business owner, or identifies as a creative or a creator, like, or an artist. Like, you know, I am creating something and putting something into the world that is very important to me, and it's very meaningful to me. And, you know, I've been either creating art or selling vintage or designing spaces or whatever for a long time. I always say that, like, oh, I've been selling vintage for 7 years, and that is true, but I was selling art online that I made for 2 or 3 years before that. So I've been selling things on the interwebs for like 10 years, and it's really weird now to not have something to really sell. I know that sounds like a weird way to word it, but you know, I've been making money by posting things on Instagram for almost 10 years, and so right now, this is my way of, you know, pouring myself into a project. And I thank you so much for listening, because I am postpartum. I am pivoting from the way my business has looked for the past 7 years. I am changing and growing and morphing into something different. And so I just want to thank you for supporting this part of my journey, and I hope you don't go anywhere. So if you enjoyed this episode, if any of it was helpful to you, please consider leaving me a review. It helps me so much, and I love you guys. I hope to talk to you next week. We'll see you later.